So far in 2023, we have got a lot of news and updates about The Last of Us. It started off with a Naughty Dog blog post talking about their plans for The Last of Us this year, but that was only the beginning as the news hasn't really stopped. From news about what to expect for each new episode of The Last of Us TV show, to the announcement that The Last of Us Season 2 is coming, to rumors and whispers of whether The Last of Us 3 is happening. So it's probably no surprise that some news related to The Last of Us has slipped a bit through the cracks and perhaps not been given the attention it rightly deserves. And that's been the case with that standalone multiplayer that's set in The Last of Us universe. And while we know we are going to be hearing much more about that later this year, there are actually some interesting little nuggets of news that we can sift through. Dr. Pooplove here, and today I want to talk to you about the updates you probably missed about The Last of Us Factions 2. And stick around until the end because I want to talk about the very real, exciting possibility that we're getting to a point where a huge announcement for this game could really drop at any moment. But let's get right into it. And where we should start is with some news that comes directly from Neil Druckmann in some of his recent interviews. In an interview with comicbook.com, Neil Druckmann stated that the team has been working on this multiplayer since before the release of The Last of Us Part 2, and that it is the most ambitious project they've ever done. And this is what we've been hearing for some time. That word ambition pops up every time they talk about this game, and this just continues to tell us that this is not going to just be the normal modes that we are used to, but something even grander in scope, like a battle royale or a shared world shooter. And by admitting that they have been working on this game for a long time, even before the release of Part 2, well, I mean, come on, this game has got to be getting close to ready at this point. But another interesting interview with BuzzFeed also revealed a bit more. He mentioned that in this multiplayer experience, you will get to enter the world of The Last of Us with your friend, singular, not plural. Now, I could be reading too much into this, but why didn't he say friends? Saying friends in this sentence rolls off the tongue more smoothly, and it makes more sense. When you talk about multiplayers, you say you're playing with your friends. And one of the reasons pointing to why this could be intentional is that when you put this statement together with the concept art, which constantly shows players being paired off in teams of two, it does make me think that this could be a thing, and that this game may have a major focus on two-person teams as players look out for each other. And then of course there was another interview with the Washington Post's Gene Park, where Neil Druckmann said that Naughty Dog has been inspired by Elden Ring when it comes to the development of their next games. And of course, Naughty Dog has always had things like environmental storytelling in the mix, but I think they're really trying to lean into these things. And I think we may see some of the fruits of that inspiration in this multiplayer, especially as the co-game director of Factions 2, Vinith Agarwal, echoed this sentiment very strongly on Twitter. And this kind of all makes sense as they try to tell a story in a multiplayer setting. There may be some cutscenes here and there, but you kind of have to imagine that they will have to be much more hands-off and open with the way they craft the story with a multiplayer and multiple people playing the same game. And we'll probably have more ways of allowing the player to craft the story for themselves. But moving on from interviews, another interesting place that we can find some more information is where we used to look a lot, and that is with the job postings. Now, as I have said in the past, it has been encouraging to be seeing many of these postings filling up, as Naughty Dog seems to be getting the staff that they need to finish up this game. And even Naughty Dog Jobs hasn't really been as active as they used to, posting their openings every month. And this makes me think that Naughty Dog might be in a pretty good spot, but there are a few openings that give a couple hints at where they may be in this process. One such opening is for a gameplay capture artist intended to gather in-game shots, and they're looking for someone with world-class gaming experience to gather and capture shots in both single and multiplayer games. Now, this in tandem with a trailer editor opening tells me that they may be gearing up for some sort of multiplayer marketing campaign that displays much of what us multiplayer gamers would actually want to see. Things such as high-octane, well-choreographed in-game moments and raw gameplay that properly convey what this game is. We do know that Naughty Dog's lead video editor hinted at starting the trailer already way back in September of 2022, but these openings kind of tell me that they may be gearing up for some sort of bigger marketing campaign effort that would require more hands on deck and more than just one trailer in the future. But this isn't everything, because recently Vinith Aggarwal opened the door to a little more information about what we can expect from this game. And the door he opened was, well, about doors and how they are going to be expected in Factions 2. Now, this might not seem that consequential, but it does imply a few things. Firstly, the original Factions had exactly 0 doors that you could open, but of course the single players did. And so what this says to me is that they have been working to incorporate more mechanics from the single players that we are used to. This could further imply that there are more mechanics to expect, like the dodge or the prone, or even the rope from The Last of Us Part 2, which they probably at least considered implementing. But having doors also speaks to the world that the players inhabit. It's been implied in a lot of the concept art that this may be an open world of some sort, and having doors actually makes a stronger case for that, as I don't think having doors is really necessary to implement in an arena shooter where there's a smaller map. If Factions 1 had doors, for example, I think that would kind of be weird. But open world battle royales are riddled with doors to various buildings that you can freely walk through and explore. And this conversation that occurred specifically seemed to be regarding a dev trying to solve these door issues in The Last of Us Part 2 while players are in combat. It seems that this is a problem that the Factions 2 team is still trying to solve, which, while this does point to the game not being totally ready yet, you also gotta imagine that doors are something you worry about in the later stages of game dev. But of course, I know nothing about game dev, so I could be totally wrong. But with all this in mind, it's actually a really exciting time for The Last of Us 2 multiplayer, because we know for a fact we are getting news this year, and as the HBO show winds down and the PC port for The Last of Us Part 1 comes out at the end of March, we're getting much closer to a point where news for Factions 2 could drop at any moment. There of course have been rumors of a PlayStation showcase on the way, as we haven't had one since 2021. And word on the street is that this could be happening anytime before the E3 timeframe in June, and this would actually be a perfect place for Sony to reveal the start to their live service strategy, as we know they've been pouring their budget into it. And this is one of the very few live service games that we know about, and it's one that we've known about the longest. This would also line up nicely with Naughty Dog's hint in their blog post that we would be getting news leading up to The Last of Us's 10-year anniversary in June. And when you combine this with where things seem to be going on some of the news that I just went over, this is perhaps the most exciting and most hopeful I've actually been for The Last of Us Factions 2 in a long time. But what can we expect when Naughty Dog decides to finally break their silence and tell us what this game actually is? Well, this video goes over just that, so you should check it out. But otherwise, so long, Pooper Troopers.